Two videos that were shown to Jehovah's Witnesses during their 2023 regional convention, which is a 3-day event meant to bring together large groups of believers, have apparently been scrubbed from streaming versions of the event. But not before some watchdogs saved copies. I love the internet. The videos in question are scripted vignettes in which a young Jehovah's Witness named Elsa receives phone calls from her mother, who is depicted as a former JW. That would mean the fictional mother has been disfellowshipped or shunned, and her family is no longer allowed to communicate with her. Elsa has to figure out whether to talk to her mother or avoid her indefinitely. Here is that video, and I just want you to imagine the kind of brainwashing that is going on here, because we, the faithful viewers, are supposed to model our lives after Elsa.
Elsa, please speak up. I miss you so much. I just want to hear your voice.
It's such a struggle. What's the harm in just calling once in a while? To chat. Maybe I can even help her to come back to Jehovah.
The intended takeaway is clear. Of course, it's hard to cut ties with those who have left the fold, but the Jehovah's Witnesses demanded of their members. Elsa just needs to overcome the temptation to talk to her mom, because talking to your mother is evil. To which I say, yeah, it can be. But I think the proper way to handle that is to come to that realization on your own, instead of having a religious leader command it of you because your mother made the mistake of having her own thoughts. And then there was the second video. This time, Elsa was sitting in a Kingdom Hall, the Jehovah's Witness version of church, and she's coming to terms with cutting her mother out of her life. And she realizes it won't be that bad. After all, she's got everything she needs within her religious community, including people who will care for her.
Abel was essentially a spiritual orphan, but regardless of what his parents chose, he listened to Jehovah and patiently waited on him to fulfill his promises.
I never thought of it that way. What has Jehovah promised me if I patiently wait? Spiritual brothers and mothers. If I focus on what I do have and wait patiently, someday what I don't have may even come back to Jehovah.
First of all, if she has to choose a husband from those spiritual brothers, good luck to you, Elsa. And notice that she just found the smiling Asian woman in the room and thought, you can be my new mommy. And everything was fixed. It's just so weird. But the biggest thing to realize is what happened at the end of that video. She says she's going to ignore the phone call from her non-Asian mother because what I don't have may even come back to Jehovah. First of all, it is weird that mom is referred to as a what and not a who. But also, we hear a justification for this practice. Disfellowshipping is treated by Jehovah's Witnesses as a form of tough love, the best way to get fallen believers back into the fold. If ex-JWs are so desperate to regain contact with their families, all they have to do is embrace the faith once again. Just accept Jehovah. We're avoiding you because we love you. Those two videos, like I said, were shown during a portion of the 2023 regional conference called Better to be Patient Than to be Haughty in Spirit, in a segment urging members to imitate Abel, not Adam. The person delivering that talk, Corey Wadlington, spoke about the benefits of shunning people who have been disfellowshipped, albeit in somewhat nicer language than the blunt approach seen in those two vignettes. But I think it's important to talk about how cruel that practice is. The Detroit Free Press newspaper published an article in 2018 documenting what disfellowshipping is like for the people who have been cut out of their families' lives. Shunning can lead to great trauma among people because the Jehovah's Witnesses are a very tight-knit community, said one religious studies professor. Once you leave a group that's been your whole life, letting that go is a kind of death. An estimated 70,000 Jehovah's Witnesses are disfellowshipped every year, roughly 1% of the church's total population, according to data published by the Watchtower. Their names are published at local kingdom halls. Of those, 2/3 never return. 2/3 never return. That means they've been kicked out of their families and they never reconcile. The people who are ex-JWs are treated like pariahs, are effectively dead to the people they grew up with, and most of them just choose to accept it after a while. Can you imagine your parents or your kids deciding they never want to speak to you again because you don't share their religious beliefs? I mean, I've heard stories like that from LGBTQ people whose parents couldn't accept that they were gay or bi or trans. It's always emotional and traumatizing, and so unnecessary. The victims just want to live their lives, but their families refuse to be a part of their happiness. Speaking of which, the idea that this is being done out of love is the same justification white evangelicals have used when promoting conversion therapy, or supporting discrimination against LGBTQ people, or using a physical object to train up their kids. It's always done out of love. Even though the fact that these practices are the very definition of unloving is so painfully obvious to everyone outside their bubbles. Disfellowshipping is also a sign of the religion's weakness. I think it sends the message that critical thinking, or just explaining the religion, will never be enough to bring someone back to Jehovah. They won't come back on their own. They have to be emotionally manipulated. That is plan A for convincing people to rejoin the religion. Now, there is a theory as to why these two videos were removed from the presentation. I don't know if this is the reason, but it may be a reason. Recently, British celebrity Rebecca Vardy, the wife of soccer star Jamie Vardy, has been in the spotlight for speaking out against the Jehovah's Witnesses in a documentary, saying sexual abuse she endured as a child was dismissed by her JW elders, and that she was disfellowshipped after leaving the organization at the age of 15.
It was horrible. I mean, I felt alienated from the other kids. We used to get hauled out of assemblies, and it was definitely an opportunity for kids to go, ha ha, you've not got anything, and, you know, poke fingers.
Some ex-JWs are speculating that the two videos were removed from all streaming versions of the regional conference in direct response to Vardy's documentary and the subsequent interest in the practice of disfellowshipping. They point out that each segment in the haughty part of the conference is 12 minutes long, each with 2 scripted videos, except for the one that included these 2 videos, which is now only 9 minutes long. By the way, I made a video a while back about how Norway recently rescinded the religious community status of the Jehovah's Witnesses, in large part because of their practice of disfellowshipping. It was seen as too cult-like of a practice, they argued. It was cruel and unusual. So this issue isn't going away. The witnesses are going to have to learn how to defend their faith-based cruelty or admit they're wrong. And they're never going to admit they're wrong. The website avoidjw.org noted that whatever the reason for the videos being removed, the organization is not publicizing them. While the reasons for the removal of these new videos is still a matter of speculation, it seems evident that it was done hastily, with the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses unaware of what has taken place. If the secrecy was because the Jehovah's Witnesses are no longer shunning people and these videos were a big mistake, that would be fantastic. But the reality is that the practice isn't going anywhere. It's the negative publicity they seem to be worried about. Better to lie low and not draw more attention to disfellowshipping then give people another reason to despise the organization, right? Still, the not-so-subtle removals tell you a lot about how this religion works, and why decent people everywhere should never want to be a part of it.